turn I completed with the different sulcus and gyra on the different three surfaces of the cerebral hemisphere, you remember? And now we'll cover up the motor functional areas of the cerebrum. This cerebral cortex is in the neocortex. Most of it is the neocortex, but at some areas, that is the primary cortex, the origin basis, basis of origin, the primary cerebral cortex is the olfactory cortex. That's called rhinencephalon, and that is also called as allocortex or archipallium. Pallium is another word for cerebrum. So archipallium or isocortex is referred to the most primitive cerebral cortex, and that is surrounding the primary olfactory cortex called rhinencephalon, and that includes the prepiriform area as well as this hippocampal formation. And this cortex is thin and it's having only 3 layers in the cerebral cortex, only in this area. Rest of the area of the cerebral cortex is advanced and it's new, and it has a lot of other different functional areas except the olfactory area, and that is called neocortex. And this one is a thicker cortex having 6 layers. So that's how the cerebral cortex is being morphologically divided into isocortex, that is the neocortex, and allocortex called the archipallium. Okay, so that was morphological division. Now later on, actually, this was a very vague division. Like, it's everything. The isocortex is a big area. So people keep on working upon this time to time. Researchers, in centuries back, in around 20th century, that's early 20th century, around 1912, this great scientist of German scientist, he was a neurobiologist called Brodmann. He classified this, he worked upon this functional areas by eliciting with, electrical stimulus in different areas and seeing what areas of the body, the skeletal muscles, they get stimulated. And similarly, the reverse way is like stimulating, giving him, different type of stimulus on the different parts of body, and then recording the stimulus in the different areas of the brain. That was like for the sensory areas. So that's how, it took time, and he finally published his research in 1912. So because he was not the only one, there were many great scientists who tried to work upon these, classifying the different functional areas of the cerebrum. But to have a common parlance among, the entire world, to have a common terminology regarding to this functional areas, we always prefer to have one standard. Remember? Yes. So different names of animals, like regional, zonal, they have different. So zoological names came up so as to classify all the animals with a standard name. Botanical names, it's like a common unanimous name all over the world for plants. And drug names, generic names are common throughout the world. So similarly, now functional areas, maybe like, in different countries, there might be different other scientists who might have worked upon, but this is universally, accepted, which is most commonly being used is this Brodmann's classification of the functional areas of the cerebrum. And he classified it in around 200 areas. But out of those 200 areas, only the important ones are like for your MBBS and, medical curriculum, we only teach the important functional areas.
Sir, excuse me.
Hello.
Some motor areas तो पिछली बार आपने लेक्चर में कंप्लीट कर लिए थे.
That I was telling now that was totally distorted. There was lots of pauses in between.
Okay.
Recording was not clear. There was lots of so many pauses. The audio was not clear. So keep on, focusing. What I'm telling is, if you, this way, because that lecture I deleted. right?
Okay, sir.
So keep focusing and try to understand now. So that's how this classification is being accepted, Brodmann's classification all over the world. And he divided into 200 areas. Okay, so the main important motor areas we study here. So let's talk about, he actually now divided the cerebral cortex, first of all, into three different types of cortexes, like, motor functional cortex, then sensory cortex, and the association cortex, right? So you have, like, different motor areas. Now he actually, finding out different motor areas is like, in the cerebral cortex, motor cortex. If you, like, record the electrical activities by, giving a slight, stimulus with the help of electrodes to different portions of the cerebral cortex, you'll find twitching of the muscular activities mainly in the opposite half of the body, and also some, in the axial musculature, even in the ipsilateral side. So that's how he concluded, like, what are the areas in the cerebral cortex, the primary motor areas, I'm telling. So he found out that that's how this electric, the areas represent, in this motor area, primary motor area, how it is represented, the entire human body is represented, and that is called motor homunculus. Similarly, the sensory areas is by, eliciting with giving different stimulus in the entire body, and different types of stimulus in different parts of the body, and that's how he recorded the different sensory areas. But this association areas is like, association areas have no direct role on the um, motor or sensory activities, but they rather integrate the information, and they have an influence on this sensory and motor areas by integrating and then coordinating the activities in association with the different functional and motor areas. So those are called the association areas. We don't find the direct stimulus, any sort of muscular activity either, on neither any, electrical recording in case of sensory stimulus. So those are divided into different association areas. So that's how the cerebral cortex we divided into three broad headings. Now we're going to study about the motor functional areas, right? So as you remember, while teaching about the different sulci, I told you that this was the Rolandic sulcus, the central sulcus, and it was, a slightly, behind to this midpoint. Midpoint was of this superomedial border of the cerebral hemisphere, right from the frontal pole to the occipital pole. A little behind to this center, you find is this central sulcus, which is example of a limiting sulcus, and this descends downwards forward and reaches a little above to the superior temporal gyrus. So this is a limiting sulcus, right? Because it divides two different functional areas. Anterior to this is the motor functional areas, and posterior to that is the sensory cortex. Okay. Then, this functional areas, let me tell you, there were like 6 layers, right? And while I was teaching you the cerebellum, there also I told you that the cerebellum, there were only 3 layers. Molecular layer, Purkinje layer, and then the granular layer. So that was evenly spread throughout the entire cerebellum. So that was a homotypic type of distribution, homogeneous, same pattern. But here there are 6 layers in cerebrum, but the concentration and the amount of cells is and the types of cells is sometimes different in different areas. The cells are specialized for different functionings. So in areas where there's more of pyramidal cells, that is called the pyramidal cortex or the motor cortex. And in areas where there's more of these granulocytes, that's called the granular cortex or the dust cortex or the coniocortex. Those are different names for the sensory cortex. While this pyramidal cortex, motor cortex is also called as agranular cortex. Although it is not completely devoid of granular cells, you also have the granular cells, but predominantly it is pyramidal. There are different areas in this cerebrum which have both type of activities, sensory and motor activities, because they have both type of cells, but they still predominate in one type of action. Like, if there are more of pyramidal cells, it's predominantly a motor area. So such areas you call it as ms1, ms2, where capital M denotes that it is having more of motor activities, being more of pyramidal cells. Then some areas you will find that there are more of granular sites. So having more of granular cells means it is predominantly sensory in function. So such areas are mentioned as SM1, SM2, right? So this is called sensory motor cortex, and this one is called motor sensory cortex. Okay. Then we're talking here about this motor cortex, which is lying anterior to the central sulcus. So among this motor cortex, first we'll study about this primary motor area number 4, that is colored red in color here. So, this limiting sulcus, anterior to that you have a precentral sulcus, and behind you that you have a postcentral sulcus, and in between you have these two gyrus. So this is called the prefrontal gyrus, this is a precentral gyrus, and this is called the postcentral gyrus. Precentral gyrus is the primary motor functional area, and postcentral gyrus is the primary sensory area, right? And all of it is related to the soma, right? Soma means the body, the periphery, the body wall. That's called soma. So when we say somatomotor or somatosensory, it means we are, talking about the body wall, the structures, all the structures derived from the body wall. That's lateral plate, mesoderm, somites. This is forming the muscles as well as the, the body wall. So primary somatomotor area is 4 and 6, and primary somatosensory area is area number 3, 1 and 2, that is postcentral gyrus, right? You have additional, secondary somatosensory area, which is SM2, and similarly MS2 is on the medial surface, right? And MS2 is this area number 6, right? So MS1 is this area number 4 and 6 on the supralateral surface. So we'll study one by one. First of all, we'll cover up this primary motor area. Primary motor area is precentral gyrus. Now this area is the chief center for the efferents, efferents reaching to the spinal cord in the form of corticospinal tract, and reaches to the cranial nerve nuclei, that is corticonuclear tracts, and to the nuclei in the medulla, and that's called corticobulbar fibers. So the projection fibers projecting down vertically, they are all descending down from here, the upper motor neurons, and it also is connected to the opposite cerebellar hemispheres through that, corticopontocerebellar tract, and through this tract it is connected to the opposite cerebellar cortex, and it also has connections to the gray matter nuclei embedded within the cerebral cortex, and those are called the basal nuclei for the extrapyramidal tracts. So that means if you see this primary motor area as it's a motor area, so the prime function of this will be to stimulate the muscles, and for that it needs to have efferents reaching to the muscles. For the face you have corticobulbar, corticonuclear fibers. For the muscles of the body you have corticospinal fibers, right? And it will have connections to the cerebellum through corticopontocerebellar tracts. connecting the opposite, and this was passing to the middle cerebral peduncle. And of course for the extrapyramidal tract to the basal nuclei. एफरेंट्स भी आएंगे इसमें, राइट? इसमें एफरेंट्स कहां से आएंगे? एफरेंट्स इसमें आएंगे from the same cerebellar sensory areas, from the opposite cerebellar sensory areas, association areas, and from thalamus. And remember, this cerebellum was also having this connections to the cerebral cortex, and that was advanced of the neo tract, which was connecting the dentate nucleus of the cerebellum. So the tract was called dento-rubero-thalamocortical tract. Remember, right? So passing to the superior cerebral peduncles. So this tract is also providing afferents to this area. So this is primary motor area number 4. And about this area is like it controls the functioning of this is like, you know, it is this area which initiates and influences the movement of the limb muscles, all the voluntary skeletal muscles. It controls the voluntary skeletal muscles mainly of the opposite side, and but the muscles of the axial skeleton, that means related to the spine, and chiefly the neck muscles, are controlled ipsilaterally. So that was about this motor area 4, primary motor area, having afferents and efferent connections, and control also I have told you. It in basically, you know, the purpose of it is without, you know, without any associated areas or supplementary areas.
Sir,
just primarily think about
sir,
this. Hello,
sir, slide is not visible.
अभी हुआ ये?
Yes, sir, just अभी.
अच्छा, तो जिसका प्राइम फंक्शन है कि यू नो इट इनिशिएट्स
green
अ
right now,
मूवमेंट इन, अब सही दिख रहा है?
No, sir, it's green.
अभी भी नहीं आ रहा है?
No, sir.
अब?
Yes, sir, visible.
Okay, good. So it controls this, it initiates the gross movements, gross and simple movements. That's the only purpose it is doing. Voluntary skeletal movements and simple gross movements. Bas, that is all. But to advance these activities, you need to have association areas to smoothen these activities, and you know, involvement of cerebellum also is there to smoothen and coordinate those muscular activities. But primarily, if you think of only area number 4, it is controlling, it's initiating the gross movements. Now we talk about is area number 6. Now area number 6 you are seeing is this yes, so association motor areas, right? Area number 6 you are seeing is associated motor area, and together with area number 4, they're called primary somatomotor area, right? So it also has some corticospinal, corticonuclear fibers. It may have a direct influence on those descending tracts, or it may have an influence on the skeletal muscles via area number 4. So it acts together with area number 4, right? And as I told you, area number 4 was mainly causing initiation of gross movements, coarse movements. But including area number 6, if it gets involved in that activity, it will cause for programmed skilled movements, right? Whatever, like if you have a a glass of water kept in front of you and you have to pick it up, so you're moving your hand right towards that object, but your hand can reach beyond to that, or it might reach in either direction rather than gripping the glass. So to program it and to provide more skilled movement, the desired movement, you need to have this area number 6 involved in that. Got it? So this area number 6 is for programming and skill motor activities. efferents will be either direct or through area number 4. Okay, then here this area number 4 actually is also, you know, this precentral gyrus. It reaches on the medial surface also, and on the medial surface both the primary sensory area and primary motor area number 4 and post central gyrus you're seeing is 3, 1 and 2. So both these pre and post central gyrus, when they reach on the medial surface, together they're called as paracentral lobule, right? And together they this area is termed as MS1. On the MS1 is actually area number 4 completely, even on the supralateral surface as well as on the medial surface. But on the supralateral surface, it includes area number 6 also, MS1, primary somatomotor area. But this area number 6, when it reaches on the medial surface, anterior to the precentral gyrus, this area is actually here. This area is called the medial frontal gyrus, and below to that is called the cingulate gyrus. So this area number 6, which is represented on the medial surface on the medial frontal gyrus anterior to the precentral gyrus, this area is called supplementary motor area. Now supplementary area जो है, this is called MS2. So remember, MS2 is only on the medial surface, and that is medial frontal gyrus, area number 6. And area number 6 on the supralateral surface is called MS1, because that functions in coordination with area number 4. So together they are MS1, and this one on the medial surface is MS2. And as I told you before, I think that it's a supplementary area, right? Supplementary means not always required. Complementary is something which is like a part and parcel of a package, which has to be involved. That is called complementary. And supplementary is desirous. If it's required, it will get involved into the functioning. So this is supplementary motor area, right? And supplementary motor area is for, you know, I think I gave you that example before of the South Indian dance Kathakali. So it is actually, it gets involved when there is bilateral movements. It produces bilateral sequential movements and organized movements. So if you've seen that Kathakali dance, there are like, you know, foot steps, their movement of hands, their movement of neck and head and eyeballs, and the facial expression, everything has to be maintained bilaterally. So when there is such activities which are sequential in both half of the body, there is this area number area number 6 on the medial surface, MS2, that gets activated. So if there's such an instrument which can record the activity at that time, you'll find that area number 6, there will be a huge electrical activity impulses, you know, being generated from here, area number 6. Keep all these things in mind in short words, because everything you cannot remember, like, you know, it will become jumbled. You are like, you know, starting with learning neuroanatomy, and because there will be clinical questions also, aspects of neuroanatomy sometimes they are asked. So just that's why I'm just telling few simple words. Area number 4 means gross simple movements of the opposite skeletal muscles of the limbs, right? Area number 4. And ipsilateral contraction of axial and neck muscles, right? So that was only about this. 6 के बारे में क्या है याद करना है? 6 के बारे में you can remember that it is an association area, so it helps this area number 4 in programming skilled motor activity. Whenever you have to do a skilled task, this of course, I mean, you know, every time you whatever you do actually with your desires, purpose is desired what you're doing, with your skeletal muscles. So this actually is always working along with area number 6 is working with area number 4, and that's why together both of them here on the supralateral surface is called MS1, primary somatomotor area. But on the medial surface, this area number 6, this is called supplementary motor area, and this is required for bilateral sequential organized movements. Okay, so just in brief, these simple small points, if you remember, that will be easy. Now talking about another motor area, and that is the frontal eye field area. Frontal eye field area, as you know, this frontal lobe of the brain, you have two sulci running transversely, or you can say so not transversely, this is longitudinally on the frontal lobe, and this is superior frontal and this is inferior frontal gyrus. It's dividing to superior, middle and inferior frontal gyrus. So area number 6 and 8 you're seeing here is on the superior frontal gyrus. So when they descend down, area number 6 and 8, when they cross the middle frontal gyrus, so onto the middle frontal gyrus, just anterior to precentral gyrus, in continuation with area number 8, this area is called the frontal eye field area. It's a part of middle frontal gyrus. In short, you can remember it's a part of middle frontal gyrus, right? Posterior portion of middle frontal gyrus, just anterior to area number 4, or you can say it's a downward extension of area number 8, and that is frontal eye field area, right? And now frontal eye field area, basically it is connected to the occipital lobes where there is, prime visual areas. So visual cortex, it's having connections. So in response to visual stimulus, this area has a motor activity, right? So it when it gets stimulated, it causes the conjugate movement of the eyes, both the eyes, to move in opposite direction, right? So if you place an electrode or give a stimulus at this point, you will find that both the eyes, they will be deviated to the opposite side in a conjugate manner. So that is for the contralateral conjugate movement of the eyes, right? And the purpose is obviously to focus upon something, and if in that case you require an additional purpose, and that is like movement of the head or neck muscles, that also will be controlled. Like as I told you, I think I gave you an example before of a lizard or salamanders, chameleons, these reptiles, right? They walk slowly, very slowly towards the target, the prey, and when they reach a certain distance, they stop there and make themselves very stationary in a statue form, and they don't move their body parts, they only move the eyes. And these animals, these lower animals, because they have their eyes on the two sides, like in humans we have the two eyes placed anteriorly, so we have a more of binocular vision, the visual fields are overlapped. But in reptiles or in lower, and even the aves also, birds also, the eyes are placed on two sides of the face, right? So they have a monocular vision, mainly monocular vision, but a little portion in the midline is also binocular, but they have a more of visual fields. So that is what I'm saying is, in the humans, we have more of binocular vision, they have more of monocular vision, but their field of vision is more. So what happens is, these animals, in case of two attempts, one is targeting a prey and the other is escaping for life in front of a predators. So both these times, this area functions and for the movement of the eyes. Now what I'm telling is, if you observe, like on those Discovery and the geographic channels, they show actually these animals, they slightly tilt their head also, so that the prey doesn't get notice of it. And At the same time, they dilate their pupils also. Dilation of pupil is to, allow more of light, more of vision reaching, more of light reaching the retina. Okay, so although the vision will become, dilation of the pupils will lead to blurring of vision, but at least, the area of the field of vision will increase. So the purpose here, you got to know the purpose. Primarily, every, this human beings are very complicated subjects. We are artists, we hide the emotions, we can hide the expressions also, right? So to understand the basic functions of the neuroanatomy, you always have to think of examples which are like the that's why I give examples from the animal side, because the basic function, without any masking of actions, you have to understand the masking is like being, artists, we are actors, we can override the expressions. So instead of understanding it from humans, it will be better to understand the basic functions from the animals. So that's why, this, remember that when we talk about frontal eye field area, that means you just imagine an animal targeting a prey. So what it is doing, he is making his body still, and he is simply moving the eyeballs to the opposite conjugate. Right side of this frontal eye field area controls the gaze. If it's stimulated, both your eyes have a conjugate gaze on the opposite side, and similarly of the opposite side will cause the movement of the eyeballs to the opposite side. One is movement of the eyeballs, then if required, movement of the neck, and if required, dilatation of the pupil. So that was about the frontal eye field area. But remember, opposite conjugate movements of the eyes, contralateral conjugate movements, because sometimes they ask the lesions also. What will happen if there is a lesion at this site, right? So first you understand the basic things, then I'll teach you about the lesions also. That was about area number. Yep, actually area number has not been precisely given. It said that it is the downward extension of area number 8. Now look at this area number 44-45. This is called the Broca's area, or the motor speech area, right? मोटर स्पीच एरिया से मतलब हुआ है कि इट्स, first of all, look its location. There was this stem of lateral sulcus, and stem of lateral sulcus was dividing, it's a example of a secondary sulcus which is being formed because of the lesser wing of sphenoid. And it's from here that this divides into 3 branches. The sulci, 3 sulci arise from here. This point is Sylvian point. Here you have an anterior horizontal sulcus, anterior ascending sulcus, and the posterior ramus of the lateral sulcus, which is a very long sulcus, prominent sulcus, a deep sulcus, and it is an example of an operculated sulcus, right? Anyway, so the area confined here in between there, in between the sulci on this, inferior frontal gyrus, this all area is inferior frontal gyrus. On this is called pars orbitalis. This area between, horizontal and ascending sulci, anterior horizontal, anterior ascending sulci, this area is area number 45. This is pars triangularis. And this area between the posterior ramus and the anterior ascending is called pars opercularis. So pars opercularis is area 44 and pars triangularis is area number 45. Together they are area number 44, 45. Together they are called Broca's area, and they are part of the inferior frontal gyrus. Got it? Now this is the area which is predominantly active in the left cerebral hemisphere. The majority of the world population is right-handed, right? So remember, in right-handed population, this is 98% of the individuals with the right-handed population. This is predominantly actively functioning on the left cerebral hemisphere. while in the leftist population, which have, the population uh, which are working with their left hand, right? So in such population, even them, 70% of this leftist population, they have this Broca's area active on the left cerebral hemisphere. Only in 30% of the right hand, or 30% of the left-handed population, it's functional on the right cerebral hemisphere. So that means in both right-handed में तो left cerebral 98%, but left-handed population में 70% people are, even in them, the dominant hemisphere is of the left side in case of motor speech area, that's Broca's area. So now about the functioning of this area, it's like, it's for the expression of speech. It controls the motor speech area, means motor means the muscles involved for speech. So it controls the, the uchcharan, the pronunciation. The words that you speak out are being controlled here, right? And the muscles, you can see, imagine, like whatever you speak, there are different muscles involved, mainly the muscles of the lips, the muscles of the tongue, the muscles of the soft palate, and the larynx. So these are the muscles which are involved in production of sound. So that means Broca's area will lead to a defective voice. Simple expression of voice will get distorted if there is any sort of lesion in Broca's area. So, okay, so you got to know about this. Now, yes, this area is left out, and this is the prefrontal gyrus, right? Here you seeing is the prefrontal gyrus, means the anterior portion of the, superior, middle and inferior frontal gyrus. अब ये शुरू कर दिया, ये किसने शुरू कर दिया है? सिमरन वोरा, stop doing this doodling activities. ये किसने किया है? इसको चेंज करो. ये कैसे हटेगा? अभी सही हुआ? नहीं हो रहा है तो?
नो सर, वैसे ही है.
हाँ,
वैसा ही है सर, येलो कलर का.
हाँ हाँ, तो ये कैसे होगा? उधर से होगा जिसने किया है?
यस सर.
यस सर, शायद इरेज करके होगा.
सर अब हाफ पार्ट मिट गया.
हो गया हो गया
हो गया सर.
हो गया सर.
Okay, good. So I'm talking about this prefrontal gyrus. Now look here, this anterior portion of the, अब ये क्या है यार फालतू में? So the anterior portion of the superior, middle and inferior frontal gyrus, there is area number 9, 10, 11 and even area number 12, which reaches onto the orbital surface. So this is the, you can say, this frontal lobe which is the lobe actually, which in this area, prefrontal gyrus, is actually occupying within the head, like behind the frontal bone, above the orbits. So this area here, you can say, is on the superolateral surface, right? Anterior portion of the superior, middle and inferior frontal gyrus. Then it also includes the inferior surface, that is the orbital surface. Remember, there was an H-shaped sulcus on the inferior surface of the cerebral hemisphere and the orbital surface. And it also extends onto the medial surface. This medial surface you are seeing is the medial frontal gyrus. Here also you'll find area number 9, 10, 11, 12. And it also includes the anterior portion of the cingulate gyrus, this much area. Or you can say the area of the forebrain, which is occupying the anterior cranial fossa mainly, behind the forehead, that is prefrontal gyrus. And this is the area which is, responsible, which helps you to basically to control all sorts of, higher functions. Higher functions means which make you evolved human being, right? Homo sapiens sapiens, with those functions with which we are much evolved than the our just ancestors like monkeys and chimpanzees. Because here you have these areas, the prefrontal areas mein, prefrontal areas here, these areas are meant for the power of learning, learning, then memory, and then insight, judgment between good and bad, between planning, organizations, type of things, and then emotional aspects, aggression also. So all this is being controlled by this portion, right? And the more evolved this function is said to be a more evolved human being. That's why in your Hollywood movies where you find those aliens, you even in some Bollywood movies, I think Jadoo or something, aliens, you also find they are having the frontal bossing of the skull. The frontal portion is bulging out, and that's to accommodate the more amount of neuronal tissue in them. So that's why I'm telling this area here, it is related to higher intellect functions. Okay, and focusing and understanding all of it is, and paying attention of this is all related to this prefrontal gyrus. Okay, so those are all the motor functional areas which I have taught you. Next lecture I'll be teaching about the sensory areas. Yes, so motor homunculus, that was left, like this is the precentral gyrus. Precentral gyrus is the area number 4, which is the primary motor center, and from here there is initiation, or you can say the initiation of impulses down to the skeletal muscles of the opposite side and the ipsilateral muscles of the axial skeleton. So it causes only gross simple movements, right? But of course it's the main highway. Even if area number 6 want to make it programmed and skilled movement, it will also contribute along with area number 4. So this area number 4 has this representation of the body parts. As I told you, it was founded by the scientist Brodmans. Remember, Brodmans and Broca's, a little difference is there. Broca's, the area, the motor speech area, was identified by Broca's, and Broca's was a French neurobiologist. Broca's was a French, and Broca's was even before Brodmans. So that means area number 44, 45 have been allotted later on in 1912. But Broca's was in 19th century, right? From 1824 to 1880 was his lifespan. This Broca's, he was a French scientist. So that means Broca's was identified. This Broca's is being given after to his name, but he identified that the motor speech area is being controlled by the dominant cerebral hemisphere, that is the left cerebral hemisphere. He identified it much before the Brodmann gave this area number 44, 45 to it. Okay. Now, while finding out, eliciting, giving stimulus with electrical stimulus, lights stimulus on these different portions, it was found out that the somatotropic representation of the body part is inverted onto this precentral gyrus. So inverted means your area, the region of your head and neck is placed on the inferior portion of this, or you can say ventral or inferior portion of this precentral gyrus. Like you can see the larynx, right? Then the tongue, pharynx, larynx, all these muscles. And then you have the head and neck region. the head, and then you have the upper limbs, mainly the hand, then the arm, trunks, and reaching to the knee. So knee, you can see, is reaching up to the supromedial border. And then, this area number 4 reaches on the medial surface as well as a part of paracentral lobule. And so onto the medial surface, you find that there is a representation of leg, foot, and perineum on the medial surface. So this is how they have shown. This is the precentral gyrus, and this is how it is reaching onto the paracentral lobule on the medial surface. And now important about it is that the entire body is represented upside down except the face. So the face is represented vertically. Then another important thing is you can see that is, the parts of the body are shown disproportionately. Some areas like you can see the tongue, the face, the muscles of the lips, you can say thumb, index, palm, all these have been assigned a bigger area. Means what? The bigger area means more amount of neurons arising from these area will reach and innervate these muscles. So the muscles, the voluntary muscles, which are required for more integrate, more precise, more skillful activities, so they need to have more of motor activity, more neurons will supply them. So that's why these areas have a bigger representation onto the precentral gyrus. Then yes, another important thing is that the dominant blood supply on the supralateral surface is by the middle cerebral artery. Okay, and onto the medial surface, its dominant blood supply is by the anterior cerebral artery. And that anterior cerebral artery also perfuses around 1 centimeter to 1 inch of the border of the supralateral surface adjoining the supromedial border up till here. So if there is any sort of lesion or ischemia of this anterior cerebral artery supplying to this paracentral lobule, there will be paralysis of the foot muscles along with bowel bladder incontinence, right? Because perineum is also represented here. And the skeletal muscles are voluntary muscles. These sphincters, you also have, skeletal sphincters of the anal and the rhabdosphincter of the urethral sphincter. So those are skeletal muscles. So the voluntary control over these bladder and bowel is also lost. Okay, so that was about the motor, and this is called motor. And similarly, you'll find is a sensory homunculus in the the postcentral gyrus. That is area number 3, 1, and 2. That we will study separately. Just a fast revision here. Your frontal lobe has these areas. You see, is motor, premotor, frontal eye field, Broca's, and prefrontal areas. These are the areas which we studied just now. We've gone through these area numbers also. So motor is area number 4, primary motor area. Location is precentral gyrus and paracentral lobule on the medial surface. And represented is upside representation of the body parts except the face. Remember, face is normal and it's vertical in position. Then function, of course, it controls the voluntary activities of the opposite half of the body. That is the main function. And the gross simple movements. And if there is a lesion of this portion, that will lead to contralateral paralysis. Simple सी बात है, lesion होगा तो opposite side की paralysis, that's called hemi paralysis हो जाएगा. And Jacksonian fits हो जाएगा. Jacksonian fits I'll tell you अभी in detail, because Jacksonian fits is like focal irritative lesion if in this descending pathway, maybe at the internal capsule or maybe in the medullary areas. So if there is a focal lesion, like small area of the group of muscles that is being damaged, so what will happen? There will be twitching movements in that particular part of the body, or maybe a joint. Remember, what I was saying is, in this homunculus, there is no representation of the muscles as such. Whatever is this, if you talk about the movement of the limbs, actually it's the joints that are represented here in the motor homunculus, right? Because all the muscles of the limbs, skeletal muscles, they function only across a joint. If you don't have a joint in between, like, if a muscle, imagine, attached to the upper head of humerus and is attached to the lower end of humerus, what will that muscle do? Nothing. So a muscle will function only when it is crossing a joint in between. So that's why, instead of representing the muscles in the motor homunculus, it's the joint that is represented in the motor homunculus. So what happens, I will tell you a detail in the clinical applied portion. Jacksonian fits is like twitching of some group of muscles at a regular or irregular intervals. Okay, then premotor areas is area number 6, right? And this is the posterior part of superior and middle and sometimes inferior frontal gyrus also. And the exact representation of the body part is not there, and it controls the extrapyramidal system, right? So extrapyramidal system, as I told you, you've been taught about, they are sometimes inhibitory also, because to smoothen your activities, that I told you, this premotor area is for the smooth, skillful, programmed muscular activities. So when you are flexing, your extensors to a joint also need to be inhibited, right? The antagonistic muscles should be inhibited. So that's why area number 6 is, by doing all this, having these extrapyramidal connections, it provides for the skillful movements. Okay. So the effect of lesion will also be mixed with pyramidal effect, because its efferents are basically more of this, predominantly this area number 6 is functioning along with area number 4. So the effect will be nearly the same. The effect of lesion, that will be paralysis of the opposite half of the body. Frontal eye field area. If only area number 6 is lost, you can imagine there might be slight movement, but they will be not skillful movements. Okay. Frontal eye field area is area number 6 and 8. And यहाँ पे इन्होंने वही कर दिया है इसको. That means frontal eye field area is not exactly 6 and 8. It is the portion of the 6 and 8 reaching to the middle frontal gyrus. Then posterior part of middle frontal gyrus, and controls the horizontal conjugate movements of the opposite eye. You can add up that movement of the, towards the opposite direction. And effective lesion will cause horizontal conjugate movements are lost. If it's involved on both the sides. If it's on one side, it will cause the conjugate deviation of the eyes towards the side of lesion. Broca's area is area number 44, 45, pars triangularis, pars opercularis. I told you the location, no representation of body parts is not clear. And controls the spoken speech, like, expressions which brought about the production of voice. And of course, if there is a lesion, it will cause aphasia. By the way, let me tell you that MS2, remember, MS2, they have not written it here, that was supplementary motor area present on the medial frontal gyrus, and that was controlling the bilateral activities, sequential bilateral activities. That area has a representation of the body parts. They haven't seen any representation here, and they have not written about the supplementary motor area. Now prefrontal is, I told you, 9th and 11th and 12th, and the remaining large anterior part of the frontal lobe is the location. Functions क्या है? It controls emotions, concentration, attention, initiative, and judgments. All this is being controlled here. Obviously, इसमें if there is really a lesion, a person will lose all its orientation, right? So that was about the functions of the cerebral cortex, and it's done. Motor areas we have completed.